Whistleblower Radio, and very happy to be here back in California after my very long journey from South Africa. We've got an exciting show for you tonight, if all things go as planned. We've got Dr. John Waterman, who will be with me for the 2 hours, and then we've got Benjamin Fulford, who is going to be calling, we'll be calling him. He is in Japan. He is in Tokyo. He is a former columnist for Forbes magazine, and many people will know Benjamin Fulford. We interviewed him as part of Project Camelot lineup as well. So anyway, it should be very exciting to talk with him, to get his take. If you go to my blog, you can see that I have got a link to what he calls the White Knights report. But Benjamin is a very exceptional individual and has a lot of inside contacts within not only the Japanese government, but let me see, the secret societies, I guess you might say. And so it would be interesting to get his take on everything. If you want to get a sort of a leg up on that, you can look at the White Knights report, and that link is on my blog. So we'll be right back in just a moment.
Welcome to the world's meeting place. American.
It's practically narcotic.
Freedom.
Oh, yes, I like very much.
Radio.
You're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
Oh no, I've said too much.
Okay.
I set it up.
Project Camelot, Whistleblower Radio, and we are live with Benjamin Fulford, I believe, in Tokyo, Japan, and Dr. John Waterman here in the U.S. Benjamin, are you with us?
Yes.
Wonderful to hear your voice. So it is so kind of you to come on the show. I'm very interested in hearing your take on what's going on.
Okay, well, what we're witnessing now is a case of psychological warfare. And you can see it in a complete disconnect between the hysterical reporting by certain American and international corporate media outlets versus, say, Chinese, Russian, or Japanese government media, or pronouncements by the Japanese government itself. It's a question of, it's a case of fear-mongering. They're trying to use their old tools, the cabal, the Bilderbergers, the Council on Foreign Relations, all these people. They use fear and panic to control populations, and they're trying to do that now. And the reason I believe this to be the case is that for the past several years, there's been a very top-secret international effort to cut off all financing to the warmongering faction, what you call the neocons, the people who wanted to invade Iraq and kill more than 1 million people and steal oil. The people who attacked Indonesia with a earthquake weapon in order to seize their oil fields. What's happened is that the world's ultra-wealthy and bankers, who are moral people, have decided they've had enough of these people's behavior, and so what was happening is they were being cut off. Nobody would do business with them, and they were running their thing on debt. They didn't have their own money, and they've run out of money, and so for that reason, they attacked Japan with an earthquake weapon. I don't know if it's HARP or if it's an underwater explosion or if it's something, an apparatus by Wilhelm Reich, but it was clearly not a natural tsunami, an earthquake. And you can verify this by taking a look at the Ogasawara Island chain. If it was a conventional tsunami, those islands would have been hit. In fact, they were not. They had only like 30-centimeter waves. So something blocked the tsunami at that point. So we're dealing with some very specialized, high-level warfare with two sides, one side defending and one attacking. And then back here, I mean, that much you can check and verify scientifically by just examining the data. But here on the ground, it's a battle of hearts and minds. We have people connected to the U.S. Embassy going around spreading rumors, trying to sow panic. They have some guy saying he's from Chernobyl going around with a fake Jagger counter saying that, look at this, it's way off the charts. In fact, it's right now the radiation in Tokyo is normal. It's not above, anything dangerous. It's and so it's a question of trying to get these people off the backs of the people of the planet. And the American people are among their greatest victims. I mean, they've been doing this for a while. They basically looted your economy, destroyed it, and then they were going to move on to, and they did the same to Japan. They came here and they killed prime ministers and they used military threats to force them to dismantle their successful economic model and hand over all their savings. And now they're going to do the same to China. The Chinese were smart enough to say, no, we don't want this. And now there's a group of them in India. We have the 24 members of the Rockefeller clan hiding in an underground bunker in India, and Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and all those guys saying, hey, well, we'll make India the next China, just listen to us. Well, people don't trust them anymore. Their track record is one of repeated broken promises. They function somewhat like a heroin dealer. The first few samples are free. They make you feel good. But then you got to pay, and if you don't, you get withdrawal symptoms. This is how they function. And these are very high-level bankers. These are people at the very top of the world's banking system. Unfortunately, a majority of ethical bankers, including people within the BIS and the Bilderberg and all these groups that appear in conspiracy theory, are working with us and saying, no, we've had enough of this amoral, destructive behavior. And so I think we're close to the end game, but it's not over till it's over. I've seen reports that a lot of the bad guys, or what do you want to call them, have fled to an underground base in Denver, and they think they're going to be safe there. But no, because what they don't realize is that even their underlings in the military, even the goons they've hired, hate them at this point. And so if there's a man with a gun near them, they're not safe. They've basically worn out their welcome on this planet. What we're offering them as a last chance is to, appear before a Truth and Reconciliation Committee to explain what they were doing and why they were doing it. And, rather than take revenge, because they still can cause a lot of mayhem, we just, let them retire and quiet and just, give up the reins of power so that we can have world peace. It's a price worth paying. I mean, revenge is a never-ending spiral, and it's better to, at some point, just create a blank slate and say, okay, what's past is past, and it's finished. This is their last chance. I mean, they've really got nowhere on this planet to hide anymore. They're not welcome anywhere, absolutely nowhere. And this is a fact, and they know it.
Right.
And I'll name some specific names of individuals who need to be questioned and who need to appear before the media and explain what they've been doing. These include, of course, David Rockefeller.
Benjamin, we're going to have to go to commercial right here. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for that. We'll be back in just a moment.
I've had enough of reading things by neurotic, psychotic, pig-headed politicians. All I want is the truth now.
Okay, this is Whistleblower Radio, and we are talking to Benjamin Fulford and Dr. John Waterman about the situation in Japan. Benjamin, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. What I'd like to do, though, is address some of the issues that are happening in Japan at this moment. The news we're getting is that there are 4 reactors that are at certain levels of a meltdown. And that the situation is not being easily contained, and that for what at least is being told to the media is that the people on the ground there are not really experienced and did not plan for any kind of a level of an event of this nature, which to me, when somebody builds a nuclear power plant, it seems like a no-brainer that you would plan for, huge Earth change events, especially in light of the kinds of changes we've already had happening here gradually through the last 10 years, let's say, on the planet.
All right, I'd like to point out that these reactors were built by General Electric, which is controlled by the Rockefeller family, specifically Jay Rockefeller, that engineers working for them quit because they thought the design was dangerous. Furthermore, I'd like to mention that a senior agent of Rockefeller here, I won't name him, but I can, privately off the record give you his name and information, said that they were planning to build 500 nuclear reactors in China and then attack them with earthquake weapons in order to depopulate China. Now, this is clearly an act of high-level sabotage, but it is also being accompanied by fear-mongering and panic-mongering and exaggerated, reporting. The Japanese government has evacuated people from a 30-kilometer, it's told people in a 30-kilometer radius to stay indoors. And if there was a real danger, they would start evacuating people. However, again, we need to find out exactly who or what was behind this. There's another interesting thing. There's a company called Higashi Nihon Housing, and their stock price has been rising radically for the past month. Now, Japan has 3 million empty houses. It has a shrinking population, so it doesn't make sense for the stock in a housing company to rise dramatically in just a month, unless there was some insiders who knew that there was going to be an attack that would destroy houses. And again, the possibility of sabotage at these plants needs to be looked into. But of course, I recommend that the Japanese government allow in experts from all over the world to offer the latest and best advice, and to immediately bring in whatever necessary equipment is needed to prevent this from becoming a worse disaster than it has already been. So we know everything needs to be done possible to minimize the damage, but at the same time, panic mongering does not help, and exaggerated media reports, from certain U.S. media outlets are downright propaganda, and the journalists here in Japan who have been found to be spreading lies and panic will be asked to leave the country, because they're obviously not journalists. They're propagandists if they're not reporting the facts, when they're reporting lies. And this is not something that can be tolerated.
We do understand that there are some dire health issues happening, and that the radiation, as a result of also the volcano erupting. And I wonder if you're suggesting that the tsunami and the volcano, in other words, do you feel that this earthquake was helped along by the powers that be? We'll have to answer this after the commercial.
Been smiling lately, dreaming about the world as one, and I believe it could be. Someday it's going to come. 'Cause out on the edge of darkness, there I
Okay, this is Kerry Cassidy,
this country.
Project Camelot, Whistleblower Radio, and we are talking with Benjamin Fulford, who is on the ground in Tokyo, Japan, and giving us a report as well as a commentary to accompany that report. And it's very, very valuable information. If people will listen carefully, I believe that you will take away some different perspectives here. And Dr. John Waterman is on the line as well. And thank you, Dr. Waterman, for being patient with us. And if you have anything to address Ben on, feel free to sort of step in here, and I wouldn't mind at all.
Well, that'd be great. I would. Hi, Ben. This is Doc Waterman. I got a question for you and a comment. What I've observed of the reactions of the Japanese people has been encouraging, and I want to say that from the standpoint of what I've seen, because their behavior has kind of made the behavior during the Katrina event kind of shameful. I mean, I'm not seeing any reports of looting. I don't know that there is any, but I'm not seeing any either in anything that's posted in the internet or mainstream. And so, I think that's teaching the world a lesson how people of Japan are. And I've seen some things that have been pretty impressive. And so I'm not really sensing, I guess, or seeing that they are panicked. And so I was kind of wondering where that might be coming from, or where's that?
Well, my understanding of Katrina, and this is going to be hard for a lot of you to understand because it's your own government, was that it was an exercise, a rehearsal to see what would happen if it would be possible to gather up large amounts of American citizens and put them in concentration camps in the event of a disaster. In other words, the government response in the U.S. was so horrible because it was not really an effort to help disaster victims so much as a military rehearsal for martial law, and any properly functioning government should be able to, in an emergency, provide the minimum of help. And the Japanese have been, Japan is the most earthquake-prone nation on Earth. And so they've been very ready for this kind of disaster. And I want to get back to the point I was making earlier. I did receive multiple threats, one from a self-described KGB MI6 agent by the name of Slasha Moore, another from a self-described Japanese security police operator by the name of Shiramine, that Japan would be attacked with earthquake weapons and the Pacific Ring of Fire would be set on fire if, we didn't start handing over money again to the military-industrial, the neocon faction. And so there were threats of such an attack before it happened. And there are multiple witnesses and emails and other bits of evidence I can present to make that true.
Benjamin, I think that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up, and that's very interesting behind-the-scenes information. What I was thinking was that from what I understand, that the agenda, that population elimination agenda, so to speak, has not been very effective. And it appears that they've had to go to some desperate measures. And this situation in Japan, people are saying in New Zealand, the Christchurch earthquake was also a targeted hit.
Okay, this is what I heard from U.S. military intelligence. There was a weather warfare expert, an earthquake warfare expert by the name of Thad Allen, Thad Allen. He used to be with the U.S. military. He's now with the RAND Corporation. He was in Christchurch, New Zealand, with 8 congressmen, and they all left exactly 2 hours before the earthquake. So, that's a strong indication that this was not some kind of natural event. I've also heard from some Australian connections of mine that the same group of people, they're expecting something like 1 million refugees from the United States. That is to say, when the American Christian and Jewish and other people of genuine faith realized that they had living within their midst a million people who actually worshipped the god Lucifer or Satan, and that they were doing horrible things like kidnapping children, that these people would be told quite clearly they were no longer welcome in the United States, and they know they've got to find somewhere to escape to, and that's why they were asking if they could move to the South Island. They're also trying to get Tasmania, and they were told no. And because they feel like they're cornered rats, I believe this is why they attacked Japan. So what the American people need to do is immediately start some hearings to find out, exactly who these people are and what they were planning. This is a faction. Most of them are of Khazarian ancestry, and that's the same ancestry as the Ashkenazi Jews, but they're not Jewish, okay? They're not of the Jewish faith. You have to start some hearings and find out who these people are, where they are, and what they were doing. And, you know, most of us who's reading our news on the Internet at this point are aware of things like the Council on Foreign Relations and the Bilderberger Group, and their names are publicly available. A lot of the people in these groups are good people, but a lot of them apparently were part of a group that wanted to, they've been in direct contact with us. They wanted to have a population of 500 million people. The way they put it is, we want a smaller, better-run planet. And they told me, I have tape recordings of these conversations and stuff. They told me they wanted to, you know, eliminate the population, that war didn't do it very well, so they were going to try disease and starvation. And there's plenty of credible scientific evidence out there, and that they created HIV, they created SARS.
Right.
You know, and there's a World Bank report making it very clear that they paid huge subsidies to farmers to turn their crops into energy instead of food, and that was the cause of the starvation crisis a couple of years ago. So there's a clear trail of evidence. There's a group of people, and they're from this earth. They're not aliens, they're not reptiles, they're human beings, who were trying to kill billions of people. And they're in positions of very high power. They're concentrated at the very tip-top of the military, at the very tip-top of the Vatican, in the British royal family, in the Congress.
Okay, Benjamin, you know, this is our Camelot audience is very well aware of this.
Getting back to the situation here in Japan.
I actually want to ask you about Korea, because right before this happened, there were war games going on. The U.S. had ships over there near Korea, and the North and South Korea were coming very close to what appeared to be maybe a war-like situation. And I'm wondering whether there is a link up with this event.
Well, I mean, there is a link up in the sense that these people are trying, you know, they've been trying to start World War III, you know, very desperately for quite a few years now. And the reason why is if they can get a giant war going, then, you know, they're in their element. Mayhem and warfare and chaos, and they can keep themselves in power.
But why? But let me ask you in terms of why did they target that particular area of Japan? Because isn't that a lesser populated area than most other parts of Japan?
Well, here's something you can also verify that does not make sense from a scientific. I mentioned it earlier, but my understanding is the attack was actually directed at Tokyo and was deflected somehow.
Okay.
And if you look at the map of where the tsunami hit, you see there's an island chain called the Ogasawara Islands, and they should have been in the line of the tsunami, but they were not. It stopped dead there. There was nothing in Tokyo. There was some shaking. It knocked a couple books off my shelf, but that was the extent of it. So, you know, I believe they actually were aiming for Tokyo. I also got sent by Leo Zagami, who is a self-described Satanist, a photograph of a tsunami hitting a bunch of skyscrapers, you know, a drawing, I should say. So I'm pretty sure it was aimed at Tokyo and somehow got deflected. There is
okay, that's very possible. I would say there seemed to be a lot of potential for the tsunami to go out from Japan, from the center point, and yet that also seemed to be deflected. So there could be, you know, added evidence there.
Yeah, no, it's a clear sign that there's what we're experiencing is not normal natural phenomena. And this is something that scientists should really investigate. They should go out there and try to find out why didn't the tsunami hit, you know, other places. That is a very important issue because, and the other thing that really people need to look at is how important is psychological warfare in such a situation. Because it's possible that if you get a high enough threshold of panic, that some events may be self-fulfilling. A good example was this French mathematician who did some calculations. He figured out the day of his own death, and when that day came around, he was so scared he committed suicide. So I'm just wondering if there's some kind of way that mass psychology, it's just all this stuff needs to be investigated. It's a whole new era for people to study. But
well, I think that's a very good point. I think that Dr. Waterman is in a position to evaluate to some degree that aspect because of his background and training in the intelligence world. He is not in that world at the moment, but he was trained in that aspect of things.
Well, what do you know about earthquake and tsunami weapons, Dr. Waterman?
Okay, I was in the chat room. I got kind of caught off guard there, Kerry. What was it you wanted me to comment on?
Well, psychological warfare, how useful and how potent that is as part of this sort of attack. If you take the idea that if this was even a natural occurrence on any level and then augmented and pushed higher, so to speak, to become the sort of debacle that it has, then the psychological warfare that the media is a part of, and so on. Do you want to address?
I think it helps them support their agenda. There's no doubt about that. Psychological warfare is always at play too prior to events, so it'd be interesting in retrospect to soon be looking, at what was going on prior. Was sales and stock of potassium iodide going up? Was there other agendas geopolitically happening? And I think we're going to start seeing a picture again. One of the things we have to remember is that they might be making it sound more disastrous, and I'm not there. I don't know for sure. Although we're trying to figure it out, by bits and pieces. And if they want to make it more disastrous than it is, it would be logical to assume they would do that from the standpoint of the fact that the Federal Reserve, the debt of China, or debt in China and Japan, China is the biggest now. The Federal Reserve would like them to, so to speak, have the American people pay the bill, and so we do that by giving them supplies and so forth, and that takes the central banks off the hook.
Yeah, I'm directly involved in all that stuff, so let me tell you what's been going on behind the scenes. The Federal Reserve Board has been, going on repeated begging missions to China for quite a few years. What happened with the Lehman shock was that in 2008, the Federal Reserve faction in the U.S. Got cut off. They said, your credit is no longer good. And that's why if you look at, for example, Japanese export statistics from that time, you'll see like a 76% year-on-year drop in car exports to the U.S. In other words, they could no longer write checks and buy stuff. They had to pay cash. What happened after that was they sent a high-level delegation to China and said, look, it's all going to be different with Obama. It's all going to change. We're going to mend our ways. We're going to stop the Iraq war. And so the Chinese, they gave them a year's worth of extra credit. And then since that time, it's been a kind of a back and forth, and they've been doing stuff like they took all this giant machinery made out of silverware that they designed for the Manhattan Project, melted it down, sold the silver. They went and took Canada's gold stocks and sold that. It's like a junkie going to the pawn shop and selling everything he's got to keep his habit going. And what's happened is that they've come pretty well close to the end of their tether now. They're not getting any more finance, and they've run out of stuff to sell. And that's why they started resorting to threats and violence, saying, well, if you don't give us money, we'll destroy the planet. And that's why it's very, very important for the American people to identify these specific individuals who are making these threats and remove them from the command structure of your military establishment. And they know who they are. We know who they are. And so do they. And there's enough people, good guys in the military now, they know that they have to go and find George Bush Sr. and get him out of communication with his subordinates. You have to get Henry Kissinger, do the same, put him in isolation. You have to look at...
easier said than done. I want to say here, though that there's a person writing in our chat room, Benjamin, saying that potassium iodine supplier in Canada provided the South Korean government with huge amounts of KI prior to this Japan event. By KI.
Oh, well, that's exactly the sort of thing that proves that this was a premeditated attack on Japan.
Right.
And if that's true, there's some of your financial forensics that might tell you a story if that's true.
But it also links in the Korea angle because, again, I just intuitively, I sense that there's something going on here between China, Korea, and Japan and the U.S., that somebody was not happy about something and therefore resorted to this craziness, and everyone's paying for it, obviously.
Yeah.
And so I'm just throwing that out there for people to start making those links up, connecting the dots.
Well, like I say, it's a power struggle, right? And there is a large group of Koreans in North and South Korea are saying, hey, we shouldn't be pointing a million guns at each other. We're from the same family, and so let's make peace. And then there's the people who've been, receiving large amounts of money by being part of this whole military charade, who are saying, oh, well, I'm going to lose my rice bowl. I can't do that. And so the same in Japan. There's a large group of people who've been paid large amounts of money to keep this whole system going. And they require fear and enemies and stuff in order to justify their large budgets and their large salaries and all their toys. So it is a financial thing, and a lot of people's livelihoods are at stake.
Okay, we're going to a commercial. We'll be right back. Thank you.
Choose your own ground.
This is Kerry Cassidy, Project Camelot, Whistleblower Radio, and we are talking to Benjamin Fulford and Dr. John Waterman all about the situation in Japan and the more far-reaching aspects of it. What I want to ask now, Benjamin, since you have this incredible background, having been a columnist or a reporter for Forbes magazine way back when, as well as for various Japanese publications through the years. I wonder if you can address who benefits. Who benefits by attacking Japan in this way, do you think?
Well, it's a question of trying to maintain a power structure that has been in existence since the end of World War II. And the people who benefit are the big oil corporations, some of the Wall Street banks, and also there's always been a war between the nuclear power industry and the oil industry over control of energy, because energy is 70% of the economy. If you control the energy, you control the society, basically. So it's also about sheer raw power, and attacking the nuclear plants and making them seem dangerous and unsafe is a good way to keep people, addicted to oil. So, okay,
now that's a very perceptive statement. I think that's a great line of inquiry right there.
And I've also there's plenty of evidence that there's so many unanswered questions about the Chernobyl incident. Nuclear power was just going gung ho; it was spreading everywhere. And then the Chernobyl incident came, and some unnamed technicians who still haven't been identified carried out 7 steps, all very unnatural. And if any one of those steps had not been carried out, the meltdown wouldn't have occurred. So you have to ask yourself, again, who benefits? Well, as soon as that accident happened, all construction of nuclear power plants worldwide just ground to a stop. And again, so it's the oil and the coal guys who make money from that. So you have to ask, was that sabotage? Was that economic sabotage? Because you got to remember, we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars here. In with that, and if you have that much money, you can hire plenty of special forces and saboteurs and whatever.
Well, I'm getting evidence sent to me that there was a move to put oil in or to drill for oil in New Zealand, and that part of the reason they did the earthquake in that particular area of New Zealand was because they planned to put in oil fields or something there. This is what I'm being told.
Yeah, this could well be because, clearly I've had from U.S. military intelligence sources, testimony that the tsunami, an earthquake attack on Indonesia, was designed to get the oil rights in that part of the country. And you got to remember, there was a U.S. fleet standing by before the tsunami hit with aid equipment and everything else. But so they have been known. The oil companies do use sheer violence in order to seize oil. Iraq is the most blatant example. That's something that they can't hide. It's just right out there.
Yeah. So, but there also, Dr. Waterman, could you weigh in on this? Do you happen to feel any way, one way or another, in terms of this approach about the oil versus nuclear power?
Oh, well, anytime you've got money involved in these things, they're always trying to, I don't care if they are money hungry, the most important thing that people do when they're in power is try to protect their enterprise, try to protect their empire. So the oil empire is going to continue to try and protect theirs. The nuclear power industry is going to continue to try and protect theirs. Now, really, even those that even lead those industries are lieutenants to a bigger agenda, and the big agenda is, of course, not to ever allow us to have any kind of energy business, which, by the way, represents about 70% of the employment in America anyway. And so when you have the energy industry taken over by free energy, it would just take all their power away. There's never going to be a time when they'll ever get rid of all the nukes, all the oil, and it just depends on what your opinion is about all that. And I know it comes very emotionally and from all different kinds of directions. I'm one that does not believe in peak oil. I am also one that believes in the fact that there's a bunch of stupid mistakes being made by both industries, and that's the cause of a lot of this problem. It's just a mess. In fact, when you start talking about what Fulford was talking about in the Ring of Fire, it was Chile, February of 2010, had the 8.8. And if you look at the Pacific Ocean like a clock dial, it was over about at the 5 o'clock. And then you swing around to about the 8 o'clock, and you have the New Zealand quake on the February 11th or February of this year. And then it was 6.3, and then you go up to about the 11 o'clock hour, and now you've got the Japanese earthquake at March. And so if I were if I were placing a bet in Las Vegas, I'd be saying the next one's going to be at 2 o'clock, which puts it right into the North American continent. And,
the same people who threatened me did say that the New Madrid fault zone was next. And that, okay, I believe, is in the southwestern U.S.?
No, that's right by Kansas, right down the middle of the country.
Right. That's what they know. That's what they told me they would hit next.
Yeah. There have been rumblings about that, although Cliff High is talking about something in California, I believe, an earthquake.
That's another possibility, because there also talks about, sinking California into the ocean,
I'd anticipate that it's going to probably cause issues, up there around California. And some of the things that always happens right before earthquakes has been happening. They've had a massive fish kill and a die-off at Redonda Beach. There's been a massive fish die-off in Mexico. whales are moving in close to San Diego, and they're all out of whack. And so all those geomagnetic things are always coming.
Thank you. But let's ask Benjamin if there were any some of those effects happening in Japan prior to the earthquake.
Yeah, that'd be good.
To be honest, not directly. It was happening on a very different level. It was happening at the level of high finance, not at the level of the actual equipment. There were threats being made and counter threats, and I was told. I mean, I gave to the Japanese police a list of senior agents here who were working for the oil lobby and those people, and I was told that because I had exposed their network in Japan, that there were going to be terrible consequences. So apparently, this is what the consequences were. But there was nothing in terms of natural phenomena. The other thing I'd like to point out again is the HARP facilities, and you know where they are, and you know where the underground bases are, and it wouldn't take a lot, I think, to just put them out of commission. The underground bases, all you got to do is cut off their air supply, and that's it. And the HARP facilities, just people inside have to say, hey, why are we working for these insane people? And they just turn the key and turn the thing off. It's a question. That's why it's psychological warfare. If enough people in the military and other organizations change their minds and say, hey, you know what? I don't think I like what these guys are doing. I know I'm supposed to obey orders, but there's a certain point, such as killing millions of innocent civilians for no good reason, where military orders should be disobeyed. I mean, it's got to be very extreme, but I think we're at that level.
Okay, what if you just go up another level, though, and you look at a coalescing of power, which this one world government, and there's a very strong effort on that behalf, even to the detriment of the United States, so that the United States is at the end of the gun barrel in many cases in regard to that. At least certain aspects of it.
All right.
And so what happens here is we've got certain countries being hit one right after the other. There were some incredible electrical storms over Australia and the incredible flooding. I mean, if you start looking at the whole world map as sort of a domino effect, and you've got China had a major earthquake out in the provinces, right? And in terms of trying to hit certain countries to make them come on board with an agenda.
All right, look, first of all, there's a couple of things you need to understand. One is that there has always been a world government, or there have been for years, and it's just been kept secret.
I agree with that.
And the other thing is that we do all live on the same planet, and that means we need a certain minimum set of global rules. And that means, for example, that if a country, causes harm to another country, instead of starting a war, they should be a place where they could sue them, and do it in the court of law without resorting to war. And there's we all share the same environment. We breathe the same air, and we live in the same ecology. So we all have an interest in making sure we keep the air clean and the ecology healthy. And we all also share an interest in making sure that there's no starving people out there. So some kind of minimum, non-centralized set of rules so that we can live together in peace are necessary. But what these New World Order guys were after was something much more radical. They wanted a centralized, absolute fascist dictatorship with a single kind of God-king type leader, a pharaoh or whatever, and with an elite living like kings and the majority, living like slaves. And this model of world government is something that I don't believe anybody except the people who would be at the top are interested in. And that's what our group has been fighting against. We're saying, we need, we all live in the same planet, and there's certain neighborhood rules we all have to obey. But no, we're not going to sit around and obey some, huge central government in Beijing or wherever, We're an independent, sovereign people, and we have our own lifestyles we want to live. And as long as we don't commit crimes, we should be able to continue to do that. Unfortunately, the U.S. has been committing crimes worldwide, and this has nothing to do with the American people, but you have to address the leadership group that has, put out these arcane publications like Foreign Affairs, where they try to create some kind of, convoluted justification for aggression and theft. And so you have to attack them intellectually, you have to attack them legally, and as a very extreme last resort, you need to, arrest them. You need to have some kind of threat of force in the background within the frame of law saying, hey, if you're going to go around killing people, we're going to put you in jail. This is the bare minimum that the American people need to realize if they want to be, live peacefully on the planet with the rest of us.
I agree. But to get back to this situation in Japan, Benjamin, because it was targeted, if you buy into the idea that it might have been targeted, there's a couple of things to look at. One is I happen to watch earthquakes around the world and have been doing for many years. Honshu, Japan, has always been a weak spot. It has had lots and lots of earthquakes, and it actually some quite large ones throughout the time. And so if you're going to target a place, this is just for the listeners as well, with say a HARP weapon or an electromagnet scalar weapon, then you're going to look for a weakness that already exists. You're not going to create a new one necessarily. So this is taking advantage of a weakness, and a 9-point earthquake is just humongous. Okay.
Yeah.
But again, back when the original atom bombs were hurled at Japan, that was also a move to get Japan into line with an agenda. And so perhaps we can look at this as a similar effort. Would you say?
It's also worth noting that according to U.S. government declassified documents from the 1950s, they were planning at the end of World War II to hit Japan with earthquake weapons. At the time, according to these U.S. government documents, it was to be underground explosions that would set it off. But anyway,
but in terms of the agenda, the agenda as, in other words, a one-world government that is more or less with Nazis, a Nazi sort of at the helm, is obviously the program. We're going to a commercial. We'll be right back, and please hold that thought and pick it up when we come back. This is Kerry Cassidy, Project Camelot, Whistleblower Radio, and we are talking to Benjamin Fulford and Dr. John Waterman. Benjamin, could you pick up on your thought that you were interrupted right when
different groups worked with different plans for world government. There was one group that was centered on the old royal families, including some of the European royal families, and their plan was to have the old money and the old royal families acting as like constitutional guardians, and then the United Nations was supposed to be like a world parliament. And so it would be something like Thailand, where you have a parliament that does the day-to-day running of the country, and then you have in the background the old sort of structure of the kings and all that stuff who don't actively participate, but if there's an emergency, they step in. And this group supported President Kennedy. They gave him a bunch of gold to back his new Kennedy dollars. And Kennedy was assassinated, and the leader of this group, President Sukarno, was also deposed. And other members of the group, like Marcos from the Philippines and the Shah of Iran, were removed from power.
Right.
And the group led by George Bush Sr., who were Nazis, wanted instead the fascist world government, and they've been pushing their agenda ever since, and there's been a group that has been trying to stop them ever since. So this is high-level warfare over control of the financial system. But I think we all, or most of us, agree we don't want a Nazi totalitarian world government, even if we can discuss the details of what alternative arrangements we need to have to live together on this planet in a harmonious manner. But the 9/11 attacks were also directly related to this because they were told, the people at the Federal Reserve Board, the Nazi faction, were told, hey, you've got a check coming due. You issued this bond. It's come due. It's backed by gold that we gave you. We want you to give the gold back. And if you don't, we're going to put you in jail for fraud. And that first bond that came due was on September 12th, 2001. So obviously what they did was they took the gold and they hid it in California. And they blew up the World Trade Center and the Building 7 to hide the evidence. And they say, hey, if you want to take your gold, you just try, buddy. It was sort of like acting like a thug, not like a proper law-abiding country. And so again, the warfare over control of the world's financial system has continued unabated ever since. And most people living in North America who have to rely on propaganda, corporate media for a lot of their overseas news, learn of it as things like the oil price suddenly went up, or there's a Lehman shock, or something like that. They don't see the whole picture, or there's an earthquake. But it's
well, Benjamin, I wonder if you might want to touch on the money in the Philippines and the role that Japan plays in that, because I wonder if that is got anything to do with why they might hit Japan at this time.
Well, yeah. No, what's happened is, you see, the gold, the dollar, U.S. dollar is made in different parts of the world. It's never been a U.S. dollar since 1913. And they manufacture it in China, in Japan, and Indonesia, and other places. And what's happened is the U.S. dollar is owned by everybody except the fascist faction are now backed by gold. And nobody has been willing to hand over gold to the Nazi faction. And that's why they've been threatening, say, hey, you got to give us gold, you owe us, buddy, we and so it has a lot to do. The gold has been piled up in several different locations in the Philippines and Indonesia, and I've heard, although I can't confirm, under the ocean in the Bermuda Triangle. And all they do is they have the GPS location of the gold. A lot of it, by the way, in the past few years has been shipped around the world. A bunch of it's in safes in Switzerland. The Saudi family, the oil family, they have a bunch hidden away. So people around the world have been buying gold and stashing it, and it's all been part of this campaign to replace the fiat-based U.S. dollar with an international gold-based dollar, and then the American people can issue their own currency controlled by the Congress for their own, uses, and they would have their own real U.S. dollar as opposed to a fake international, but or an international dollar called the U.S. dollar, but which hasn't been a U.S. dollar for 100 years.
Okay, so Benjamin, we have to move along very quickly now, even though the music is playing underneath.
Yeah, just tell everybody, that if the U.S. is going to be the next target, and anybody who's in a position to stop one of these people from using those earthquake machines, please do so for the sake of humanity. We've had enough destruction.
Thank you, Benjamin Fulford, for coming on the show and for sharing your views. Very important information, and I really appreciate it. Hope we can do this again sometime soon. And Dr. Waterman, you too, and thank you both for coming on the show today. This is Project Camelot Whistleblower Radio.
No taboo topics. No taboo topics. No fear of doom. No fear of doom. We are